We're going to take a look at the third saw in our group, and this is a little scroll saw, very handy. It's got about an 18-inch depth, so you can use a pretty big piece of material. Very fine blade. We're going to loosen and remove the blade, and I'll let you see it. It's straight out of a hand jigsaw, and it allows you to do nice scroll work on the interior of a piece of wood without having to pierce the sides. This is the nose rib that we just did on the thin curved bandsaw, and I'm going to, and I've drilled a hole so that we have a way of getting the blade on the inside, and I'm reinstalling the blade. We tighten up the tension. It doesn't have to be overly tight. Now you need to be sure to hold firmly to your piece of wood, because if the blade gets it and you're not holding on, it'll jitter around for you. But we're going to cut out this interior space. Okay, so here we've got the center portion cut out rough, and we'll finish this hole on the next step. Okay, one of the things that you commonly need to do in a woodworking shop with aircraft is to plane a piece of wood to dimension. Generally, you're not going to be able to take a large piece of wood and run it through your table saw to shape. You might use the table saw to rough it out, but you're going to want a planer to give you 4 smooth sides. Today, I'm going to use this piece of spruce as an example of an aircraft spar. This is actually a cut-off piece that we had from a Curtis Jenney project. So what we're going to do is we're going to use it and another piece that we cut earlier on the table saw as our examples illustrating the planer. Now this is a commercial 12.5-inch DeWalt planer bought locally at the hardware store. It does a great job. I've had it for any number of years, and I've never had any problem. You cannot force it, meaning you can't take huge cuts. If you're in a hurry, you're going to want to get a much larger, more powerful machine. But if you take your time, you can get very good results with this machine. The things you need to know, in the example of like this spar, we would have cut this on the bandsaw just like we showed the sample earlier, and so we would have bandsaw marks on all 4 sides. So we want to remove those marks. Every piece of wood that we have has, of course, a grain, and the grain runs a certain way. So as the wood passes through the saw, the planer, excuse me, you're going to want to notice if the grain is lifted or not, and I will show you that. Once you know which way the grain runs, you're going to mark it with your pencil and repeat to pass the piece of wood through in that direction only. Otherwise, you're going to tear out the grain with every pass on the saw, and you won't end up with 4 smooth sides. The machine's very loud, so you're going to want to wear your hearing protection. And generally, it's going to create a lot of chips, so when you're all done, you'll want to vacuum them up so you don't have any chance of slipping or tripping. So another useful tool in this operation is an inexpensive set of calipers. I call this my dummy gauge. I don't rely on the machine's height or ruler. I use my inexpensive calipers. And so if I know what width I want my spar to be, I set the caliper at that width, and then I tighten down the vernier and it holds it. Okay, and now I know that this is the finished width we want on this spar, and I can leave this on top of the machine and check it after each pass, and I'll show you that. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the first pass on this machine. We've got inset rollers and outset rollers to catch the piece of wood. If we were working in a situation where our spar was much, much longer, like the original piece I have here was 20 some odd feet long, I'd need another person to help me. But for this demonstration, we're just going to use this relatively short piece. Okay, so now we're going to try our first pass. Okay, what I'd like to show is, if you can look right here, I deliberately ran the piece of spruce through in the wrong direction. The first pass that we just made was perfect. It was going in the right direction. But when I turned the piece around deliberately and ran it through, we had this tear out where the grain has been pulled. The wood just passed through the machine this direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to take my pencil and put an arrow on it, and that way I know that it has to go through in this direction as we make consecutive passes to reduce the width of the material. We adjust the height, bringing the blade down a little bit, and we start again. Now, if we look, there isn't the tear out in the grain that we had before. So we know that we're passing this through in the right direction. And so that you know, if you have to stop in your process, you want to put your little arrowhead back on there. And we can continue to plane this down till we get the exact width that we want with our calipers. In this instance, we're now going to turn it this way and plane this surface and this surface so that we have a four-sided spar that is perfectly square. So in this example, we've got our nice square spar. We've removed all of the saw marks that were created when we bandsawed this sample spar. So we have four smooth sides using the planer. And had this been, the exact spar that you wanted, you would have used your calipers that were preset so that you got the exact width and height you wanted. In this case, it's just a practice piece. We're going to use it a little bit later on in the class, so the exact height and width didn't matter. But if you were doing it for an actual airplane, you'd use your calipers and you'd make it exactly to the right dimension. Now the next thing we're going to do is use the planer to plane this smaller piece that we had cut on the bandsaw. Remember, we ripped this on the bandsaw. You can clearly see the bandsaw marks, and you can see my pencil mark where we went. And we want to make this four-sided clean. And we'll just do that and get ready for, this will be used in a future lesson. Okay, so we took our piece that we cut on the bandsaw and we've run it through the planer now, and we've got 3/4 inch thick by 1.5, and we're going to use this later on in the class. So now we've demonstrated to use the planer to cut to a specific dimension, and showing using the calipers and marking with a little arrow which way the grain is going so that you can repeatedly pass your piece of wood through the planer correctly.